Hello and welcome to the Engerati studio. I'm Rob Martin and I'm joined here by Peter Siggins, partner in the Energy Group for PA Consulting. Peter, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So let's talk about the pace of change. At events such as this, and maybe behind closed doors sometimes, utilities get a bit of a hard time for the pace of change and being accused of being slow to adapt to the new technology and technologies that we see hundreds of applications for it at this exhibition alone. You've got a slightly different take on that, haven't you?
Yes, I agree. Utilities do tend to get a bit of a hard time, but actually if you look at things a little bit more broadly, all industries I think are facing a similar phenomenon, which is that the rate of change of the introduction of technology is following something like Moore's law. So it takes less than 5 years for something new to be introduced to become ubiquitous. And now we're seeing that there's a gap between the rate of introduction of new technology and our ability to adapt as humans and our ability to adapt as businesses and organizations. So what utilities face, actually, a lot of other organizations across other sectors face. So, and what we see actually is that there is quite a significant change taking place within utilities to try and speed up that ability to adapt. So I think they're getting a little bit of bad press unfairly. They're doing their best, they're not alone.
And you've identified 4 ways that they can transform their business models to help them along that change path. Talk to me about those 4 areas.
Yeah, so a lot of people, and I might go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but a lot of people at this conference will talk about very specific elements of how a business needs to work, whether it's to do with analytical capabilities, whether it's to do with specific technology. But if you raise it up a level, what we see is that there are 4 fundamental capabilities that organizations need to consider and utilities need to consider as they adapt their business models. The first is what we refer to as future worlds, which is the ability to be able to see pretty far ahead. Organizations tend to have a bias towards a probable future, so they base their future strategy around what they currently know. What we encourage organizations to do is actually be provocative and to think a lot more broadly about the fundamental things that are going to influence their future and to arrive at what they see as a preferred future. Now, if you take it at industry level, regulation and the introduction of new regulation and technology are the 2 major influencing factors in terms of what the future might look like. But we encourage organizations to build capability to constantly think about what their preferred future is, to chart a path towards that. The second is innovation. Now, a lot of organizations struggle with this because they will say, well, we're not very innovative, so we need to do something to make ourselves be more innovative. However, it's not an individual pursuit sport. So innovation fundamentally involves an ecosystem of players. And that's a capability that organizations need to learn and understand. There are some very good examples from the US in particular. For example, Duke Energy's Coalition of the Willing was a very good example of open innovation and collaboration to generate new solutions for introduction of microgrids, for example. The third area is what we call Customer 4. It's essentially moving towards where companies like Amazon have got, which is that they concentrate on desired customer outcomes. So the current world, we tend to say we have a product and service, how do we get that to our customer and how do we optimize the experience? However, actually there's a new order that says, well, actually you need to think about what your customers' desired outcomes are in terms of energy consumption, whatever it might be, and design your business to deliver those outcomes. So it's really an outside-in approach to redesigning the way your business operates. And then the final area is agile. So a lot of people associate agile and agile methodology with the implementation of IT projects. At PA, we work with organizations to make the whole organization agile, which means that actually you can be more fleet of foot and implement things more quickly. You can actually test things to failure from an innovation perspective, but essentially that allows you to transform in a much faster and more efficient way.
And I mean, if we go back to look at the first part about the customer centric and looking towards the future world, I guess one thing that's a reality is that consumers aren't going to behave in the way that we assume they're going to behave now, which I guess is where the agility comes in at the end. And a lot of people are talking about how a consumer is going to go about their everyday life, how they're going to interact with energy, and it's assumptions, isn't it? Assumptions and predictions based on how we think people are going to behave. But it doesn't always play out like that, does it?
It doesn't, and this is where, again, within the context of these capabilities, it's important for utilities to look outside their industry, because a lot of what we see as desired customer outcomes are not actually dictated by what's happening in the energy industry. They may be dictated by what's happening outside their industry, whether it's in retail, whether it's to do. So for example, if you think about things like the connected home, you would say, well, actually Amazon's Alexa is potentially capturing the connected home experience. So that in itself starts to influence what desired customer outcomes and expectations are, which has an impact on the utilities. So that's why all of these capabilities are really important in the context of this is very dynamic and it will continue to shift.
And you mentioned Amazon there. I mean, do you subscribe to the view that companies like Amazon are the real threat to utilities, that it could be companies like Amazon that are retailing energy in the future, or do you think this energy is too small fry for the likes of Amazon?
No, I think it's legitimate to think about that. It can be overplayed because ultimately you're talking about, depending on your geography and your jurisdiction, it's still largely a regulated business. And also a lot of it involves operating and building critical infrastructure. So I think from that perspective, there are different dynamics around your ability to enter and compete in the energy business. So I think from that perspective, utilities can look at it from a perspective of I'm an incumbent and I am operating in a regulated market. Therefore, my job is to protect that. So that there may be competition at the fringes, depending on how the industry is structured. There may be different elements of competition. However, I think it comes back to utilities now, I think, are getting better at looking further outside their industry, understanding what shifts are taking place in the customer environment, and then if they can take the next step, which is to design their business models to deliver those expected outcomes, then I think they'll take a significant step forward.
And so how are you helping utilities with that?
So we work with a lot of business transformation, strategy and business transformation and technology are all at the core of what we do at PA Consulting. So we have consultants with a wide range of capabilities which we apply routinely with utilities to help them set their strategy, understand the transformation roadmap, because you can't do it all at once while you're still trying to run your business and generate a shareholder return. So there's a tricky navigation, and also we work with a lot of these organizations to help them build the capabilities that I discussed within their organizations so that they can be sustainable for the future.
That sounds like a good note to end on. Peter Siggins, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us in the Engerati studio. Remember, there are more interviews available on the Engerati YouTube channel. Goodbye.